The Backrooms released on May 29th, 2026, the debut of Kane Parsons, a new filmmaker who managed to turn a random internet post into a series of intriguing videos and now into a full-length feature film. It's easy to say that The Backrooms is a success, financially and critically. There are so many questions around this movie, spawning numerous YouTube videos of much greater authority and scale than my own. But the question I want to raise is a simple one. Why is the monster a pirate? Going into the movie, I only knew about the 4chan post and the generic internet folklorish moss that had grown around it, but I was unaware of Kane Parsons' YouTube series. In retrospect, I feel grateful for being able to experience this movie freshly. I assume Parsons expected as much of his audience, hoping to carry over fans from his YouTube series and still keep the movie approachable enough on its own merits to attract a wider audience. Given the roaring box office numbers, it seems this strategy paid off. But the real benefit of seeing the movie without having first seen the YouTube series is that I had very little idea what the villain was going to be. I had seen the trailer, and I expected the antagonist to be a person. Such is the essence of psychological thrillers. The human mind becomes the subject, allowing us to see the monsters in the world as projections of those monstrous forces within us. But this actually seems to be a point of contention amongst those who follow the Backrooms. The community is divided precisely on this question. What should the monster be? And, perhaps more fundamentally, should there even be a monster at all? This is the question I see again and again online. What really drives our fascination with the Backrooms? Is it the physical space itself, infinitely expansive, yet still somehow paradoxically closed? Is it the gradual consciousness that the nostalgia it invokes is more painful than pleasant, more frightening than inviting? Its memorabilia, bereft of context, mocks your own memories and exposes them with a cheap, vacuous imitation, as if your own memory was, in fact, not yours, but somehow collective and stripped of everything that makes it unique and special. You realize that your memories can't be cherished, yet can't be forgotten, and actually, they aren't even really yours. This is why people refer to the Backrooms as unsettling, but the word they choose to use more often is liminal. It's a transitional space where the mind never totally crosses the space as it reaches out to the other. It is liminal as it is an endless recursion of forked paths and fractal choices, where the unease comes from the physical space itself, and the vain attempts again and again to wrap your mind entirely around its boundless form. Or is the Backrooms a dangerous space where monsters lurk behind corners, where one hears in dread something a little more than an echo, where every step forward requires a quick glance back, where the laws of reality are suspended, and with them the psychological shield of our sanity buckles under the weight of a crushing dread, a dread more terrible than what the mundane world provides, a fear more electric, a fear suggesting we are in mortal danger. In a word, is the Backrooms a dangerous space? This divide is everywhere the Backrooms is discussed. YouTube, forum posts, movie reviews. I also found this divide when I checked out Steam, with two games inspired by the Backrooms: The Complex, Found Footage, and Escape the Backrooms. The Complex is a walking simulator that makes you feel as if you're in the Backrooms and quickly dispels the fear of an entity in order to replace it with a subdued but growing dread that comes from the perpetual dissatisfaction of your curiosity and wanting to know what's beyond the next corner. Behind that pillar is another. This room leads to one just like it. That hallway branches out into more. A map to tell you where you are is useless when there is nowhere discernible you wish to go. Now, the other game, Escape the Backrooms, is a horror game. It has levels and keys and doors and, most importantly, enemies. Various entities hunt you, each inspired from different sources of Backrooms lore. There's the bacteria, the skin stealer, the smiler, so forth. But the entity in the movie Backrooms is none of these things. Indeed, I'm not convinced it's even the entity we see in Kane Parsons' own YouTube videos. It's a giant, distorted facsimile of Clark dressed in the same outfit as his Captain Clark persona in his TV ad. We first see Clark dressed up like Captain Clark with his employees filming the advertisement before his chair collapses and then he dismisses them in humiliation. Then when the async researcher Phil is watching TV, we see that the ad was actually completed after all. In the showdown in the kitchen in the third act between Mary and Clark, Pirate Clark appears. Clark blindly attempts to placate the creature, after which it promptly decides to take a bite out of his shoulder and then drags his carcass as it chases Mary through the backrooms. Now, I think the choice to make Clark a pirate is actually genius. And the theory I'm advancing here, while it may or may not be true, I think certainly deepens our appreciation for this movie and its creative choices. Moreover, Pirate Clark helps to bridge the divide between the two sides to the fandom, those that emphasize the Backrooms as liminal and those that emphasize it as dangerous. When I was watching the movie, I actually thought of something else. The Backrooms reminded me of the ocean. And the more I thought about it, I gradually grew more convinced that even if not the soul or even expressed intent of Parsons or his crew, this view actually helps us appreciate both sides of the Backrooms' broad appeal. First, there is a lot of nautical imagery throughout the movie. The first creature we see is a seagull. In the same scene, we see captain's wheels on the walls. This, of course, foreshadows Clark's furniture store, Captain Clark's, and all the nautical imagery that follows from that. The first researcher is killed in a room with, unsurprisingly, beach wallpaper by what we later figure out is Pirate Clark. So why is this important? Well, the Backrooms crosses many genres: horror, psychological thriller, science fiction, but I was not expecting it to overlap with one of my favorite genres, nautical fiction. And you know this genre by its classic features: swashbuckling pirates, thieves, robbers, captains and coxswains, treasures and betrayals, skullduggery and daring do, and maps where X marks the spot. Now, there is, of course, another side to nautical fiction: exploration and shipwrecks. Captain Clark is an aesthetic reference to a famous story of exploration, Long John Silver from Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, who uses a peg leg and deceives Jim Hawkins and the crew in order to find buried treasure with a map. Clark, too, deceives Kat, Robert, and Mary and charts his way through the Backrooms with his own hand-drawn map. But there's actually another book I think even more useful, a book that inspired Treasure Island itself, and that's Robinson Crusoe. Now, the story of Robinson Crusoe may be familiar to you. A man named Robinson Crusoe is aboard a ship that runs aground somewhere off the Venezuelan coast. He and some of the animals on board are the only survivors. Crusoe suffers a mental crisis as he grapples with the fact that he's all alone on this island with practically no hope of rescue. Against all odds, Crusoe manages to make a living for himself, content to view his prison as a paradise, a realm to call his own, untouched by man, untempted by the decadence of civilization, unmolested by its worst impulses. He's able to be a man again, or perhaps a man for the first time. He could be authentically himself, to find himself alone with his thoughts. And then one day, something happened. It happened one day, about noon, going towards my boat. I was exceedingly surprised with the print of a man's naked foot on the shore, which was very plain to be seen on the sand. I stood like one thunderstruck, or as if I had seen an apparition. I listened. I looked round me, but I could hear nothing, nor see anything. I went up to a rising ground to look further. I went up the shore and down the shore, but it was all one. I could see no other impression but that one. I went to it again to see if there were any more, and to observe if it might not be my fancy. But there was no room for that, for there was exactly the print of a foot, toes, heel, and every part of a foot. How it came thither, I knew not, nor could I in the least imagine, but after innumerable fluttering thoughts, like a man perfectly confused and out of myself, I came home to my fortification, not feeling, as we say, the ground I went on, but terrified to the last degree, looking behind me at every 2 or 3 steps, mistaking every bush and tree, and fancying every stump at a distance to be a man. Nor is it possible to describe how many various shapes my affrighted imagination represented things to me in, how many wild ideas were found every moment in my fancy, and what strange, unaccountable whimsies came into my thoughts by the way. This moment, the footprint on the shore, shatters Crusoe's sense of safety with the retrospective awareness that his ignorance was never bliss, but blindness. Was he ever safe? Or was he simply lucky? And if so, when was his luck going to run out? Robert Louis Stevenson said of this scene that Crusoe recoiling from the footprint was a culminating moment in the legend which has been printed on the mind's eye forever. What is the Backrooms if not Crusoe's footprint? What in that vast, expansive yellowscape isn't contained in that shallow, sandy impression, whose physical presence will soon be washed away, but once in the mind, cannot then be denied? And that, I think, is the Backrooms. It's simultaneously Crusoe on the island, standing at the threshold, with the untamed jungle on one side and the bare, scattered trappings of civilization on the other. And it's also Crusoe at the shore, one moment casting his thoughts only to peaceful repetitions of the moment, and in another instant recoiling at the thought of an alien, unknown presence on the hunt. And just as the story Robinson Crusoe is elevated by the inclusion of both of these moments, the shipwreck and the footprint, the Backrooms is also elevated by the inclusion of both of which are incredibly well balanced in the movie. We see Clark's slow descent into madness as he attempts to colonize the Backrooms, welcoming his excommunication from the outside world and rationalizing his inner demon, swallowed up by it, and thereby ultimately replaced by it. There are other connections too, like how the people Robinson Crusoe fears are cannibals and Clark actually becomes a cannibal, or how about the strange message played on the cardboard cutout, which I think looks very Robinson Crusoe-esque. It's, of course, the golden disc from the Voyager probe, sent out to space as the only thing which could bear the sheer monotony of the journey. Yes, space, the final frontier, another mirror of the sea. Outer space, the sea, the Backrooms. Each an infinite horizon. Every step forward gets us no closer to some unreachable goal. Then the slow fading light in the soul, an ever-growing desperation creeps up. We say to ourselves, the destination will never come. And then, the destination isn't even worth it. And then, when at last we've given up but unable to turn back, we curse everything but ourselves, fate, the universe, God. We're doomed to be a perpetual voyager, but not only are we lost at sea, we slowly forget there was a land we set out from, and skeptical that there's a land we're drifting to. Finally, we come to see the sea as our home, and we share with the ancient mariner his dreadful woe. Water, water, everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water, everywhere, nor any drop to drink. Such is our self-destructive vendetta against nature. We become, like Clark, unable to move forward and afraid to move back, stuck in an endless cycle forged by the mind's path of least resistance. We don't need to change, is the last pathetic rallying cry of the mind holed up in its fortifications, making mindless war on the whole world because it can't find a way to make peace with it. That is the uncrossable sea, the infinite abyss of space, the mindless repetition of the Backrooms. So there is a monster lurking in the Backrooms, but it's the one you bring with you. The Backrooms then is incomplete without a monster, and whether that monster is external or internal, it makes little difference. It's the very nature of fiction to externalize outward forms of our inner demons. That metaphor is common for a reason. So, to return to the question, Why is the villain a pirate? Because the pirate encapsulates the man who's willing to set out on the high seas, the man who makes the sea his home, the man who's both the adventurer and the monster. Other monsters guard liminal spaces, trolls on bridges, Cerberus in the underworld, Polyphemus at his cave. But the Backrooms is more than just a liminal space, and it requires more than just a sentinel at the doorway. The villain is a pirate in the end, because pirates are precisely those monsters that patrol spaces of infinite, repetitious horizons.